This is deadline week for bills to be passed off the chamber floors. With more on what made the cut and more insight into negotiations for that compromise on the education bill, I spoke with Quorum Call publisher Shawn. Well, Shawn, as we speak, there is no consensus on an education bill. What can you add to what Taylor Jackson just reported? Give us some inside baseball on these fluid negotiations.
Well, one of the comparisons I've heard over the last couple of days is this is very much like the 56th legislature, where lawmakers were called back into a special session to try to come up with revenue-raising measures. And on Thursday, House Speaker Charles McCall actually made that comparison, talking about the time when Governor Mary Fallin asked them to put a revenue-raising measure package on the board to be voted on. McCall said at that moment they didn't have the votes. And now he wants the Senate to do the same thing, to put the plan that he and the governor are endorsing on the board in the Senate. Senate President Pro Tem Greg Treat says they don't have the votes to pass it.
Shawn, this week, Governor said issued 25 vetoes. That seems like a large number, and it seems early in the session. And one of those vetoes involves OETA. Run that down for us.
Well, the governor vetoed two series of bills, 20 in the Senate and 5 in the House. Now, the 20 in the Senate, he was targeting toward his efforts to get the education compromise accomplished, as well as a proposal to move forward on a tax cut. In those instances, he indicated that he would continue to veto bills until an agreement was reached. In the case of the 5 vetoes in the House, however, he offered specific reasons for those vetoes. And one of those, as you mentioned, was the Oklahoma Educational Television Authority. In that case, he said that the purpose of OETA may be fulfilled and questioned whether it needed to continue to move forward. Now keep in mind, the bill reauthorizing OETA passed by more than 2/3 in both the House and the Senate. It's a 2/3 vote that's necessary in order to override a veto. So if the House chooses to move that bill forward as a veto override and the Senate takes it up as well, it appears the votes are there to override it.
We mentioned OETA. A couple of the other organizations the governor wants to sunset.
Yeah, the Board of Chiropractic Examiners, the Board of Psychologist Examiners, and the Indian Education Advisory Committee. These are all under the Oklahoma Sunset Law, which indicates that every couple of years, these agencies have to be reauthorized or renewed. And so these are coming through the process this year. There are actually a number of other bills sitting on the governor's desk related to other agencies, which he could sign or veto. It's entirely up to him.
There's one bill, Senate Bill 404, is on the governor's desk right now. It has passed, but there's controversy surrounding it. What is that?
Well, this bill deals with the ability of religious organizations to participate in state government programs. Over the last several years, there have been a number of important Supreme Court decisions related to this issue. And this bill amends the Oklahoma Religious Freedom Law. And it simply says that the state cannot discriminate against religious organizations because of their religious nature. Now, much of the debate in the House this last week focused on what would happen if a religious-oriented organization was allowed to participate in some state government program and then use that money to promote religion. House Majority Leader John Echols indicated that that was not the question before lawmakers. The question was whether the state could discriminate. The normal policies, procedures, and laws that limit the ability of organizations and how they use money, including a prohibition on using money for strictly religious purposes, would apply, and the bill passed.
This was a deadline week. Something that stuck out to you that is still alive and still up for debate?
Well, there are a large number of bills, a surprising number of bills, in my opinion, that continue to make their way through the legislative session. Really, I think we need to look at that question from the other side, what we haven't seen. And what we haven't seen pass are tax cuts. We really have not seen significant tax reform measures move through at this point in the process. Now, that does not mean that they're entirely dead. We know that when they enter the budget process, we can see tax reform measures incorporated into that because they do decrease the state's revenue and ultimately affect the budget. So what may not be alive after this most recent deadline of bills to be heard on the floor of the opposite chamber can come back to life in what's known as the Joint Committee and Appropriations process.
And we've got about a month left in this session, so lots of work to do. Shawn with Quorum Call, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.